The three dimensions of implementation, where we can do work in the same geographic area, we can do work in the same thematic area, and we can do work in the same strategic area. So the three dimensions of implementation. If we can do work in the same geographic area, so we can do work in the Bahamas, then that is a tick. If we can do work in the Bahamas by addressing climate issue, biodiversity issue, waste and pollution issue, that's a 2-tick. But if you can do work in the Bahamas looking at waste issues, but also looking at implementing policy or collecting data, I think that's a trifecta right there. Yeah? So the first point is on the coordination and collaboration. It's a lot harder than it sounds. And I've spent my 18 years at SPREP trying to do it. And it's really addressing on this three dimensions of implementation. I think the second point is maybe something that was brought up during the icebreaker. It's on people and time. Eh? You know, your question is, we don't need more money, but what we need is more time. Time to allow our people to do the work. And how do you do that? By investing in more people to help us do our work. So I think the second point is on time. We need more time. How do you get more time? Getting more people. And we've tried to do that with the Islands project by having national project offices. It's more difficult than it sounds. It sounds simple, but it's a lot more difficult. So the second point is on time. We need more people. I think the third point is on regional architecture. How you do work in the Caribbean is different to how we would do work in the Pacific. So use your regional architecture. And I think the other point that's linked to that is regional projects. Is probably suited for some islands, but not suited for some islands. So the third point is on use your regional architecture. And each of the regions you have your own architecture. And the last point is on island time. You know, I think we need to respect island time. Things don't work on Swiss time. We're on island time. So I've given a few love letters to Jana when she's given me her love letters. 3 minutes left. You know, I think our project needs to respect island time and be patient. So I just want to have those 4 points. One is on the three dimensions of implementation: time, regional architecture, and island time. Thank you.
We'll take the first three interventions, and if there's any questions then from the floor or from online, we can take those. So please bear with us. I will now pass to Jewel. For a Caribbean perspective, we've heard from the Pacific. Now we'll move geographic region of the Pacific. And based on your years and years of experience, how can we practically build sustainable capacity at regional and national level, given the realities, given the brain drain? And how can organizations like BRS, GEF, UN agencies and development partners, private sector, civil society, development banks work with you to make this a reality? And how can we, I think most importantly, build strong alliances with key partners from the private sector, such as the cruise industry, which I know is a big burden in your particular region? Jewel.
Thanks very much, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on the viewers that are online. So, being a three-part question, I'll take it in pieces. So, the first part of the question referred to the sustainable capacity at the regional and national level. In looking at the national level at the onset, what I would suggest is that in the Caribbean region, there is a low technical capacity. So if we look at the human resources, we need to invest strongly in our technical personnel. and make sure that they also allow for transition of knowledge from them, because we have quite a few persons who act as repositories of information. And having that transfer of information from those leaders in the Caribbean to younger persons is quite important at the start. The training of trainers is an approach that, when I started my career, for me was a failed mechanism, but then I realized that it's really, the trainer needs to be selected properly, and that approach can also work to allow for that facilitation of knowledge sharing. On the regional level, we've seen in the Caribbean and now through islands the ability to ensure that regional projects can be successful. They are difficult. I will not contest that. And I do agree with Tony that not all the time a regional project is a fit. But notwithstanding that, the sustainability that is happening under the Islands program currently in the region, and as we are here today, in the geographical regions, is actually happening, where countries have the ability to build their waste and chemicals portfolio information in all of the key areas. For instance, in the BCRC Caribbean's business plan have been touched on under the Islands program, and allowing for that facilitation of knowledge sharing is also very important to ensure that the technical capacity is built. So it is essentially an investment in the people, and of course investment in having the ability to share information, so communication and coordination, just along the lines of what Tony said. The second part of your question referred to how can the BRS, GEF, development partners, private sector, and civil society facilitate this shift. Now, the center in its capacity has a very close connection with the BRS SEC, and that has been very useful. And I would say that is a modality where the region is given the opportunity to test, for instance, technical guidelines and look at applicability for our region, which is very, very useful, and we're very grateful for that. Under the BRS SEC, we also have opportunities for funding, such as the Plastic Waste Partnership, the Household Waste Partnership, as well as the Small Grants Program under the BRS SEC. So all of these are opportunities, and of course I urge not only the Caribbean, but all parties in this room to make sure that they are aware of these types of funding opportunities. The other success from the BRS SEC is that we are able to continually build our capacity in the region. For instance, we have developed a massive online open course for the Stockholm Convention, which allows for training and technology transfer. It's Caribbean-centric, but can be used in the other geographical regions. And if we go to the GEF, of course, the GEF is the funding mechanism under the Stockholm and Minamata Conventions. And having these opportunities before us, and especially, yes, we have islands as a program, but also your enabling activities, these are opportunities for you to tap into. The relationship with the development partners, such as the implementing agencies, is strong in the region. We've worked with all of them in the room, UNIDO, FAO, IDB, and UNEP, and it shows that we have built that relationship over time. On the private sector, it's good to see. I always laud, I know Alfredo is to the left of me, the fact that the IDB has that ability to bring that innovation to what we traditionally know as projects in the region, and allow for this type of project, such as the Blue Tech Challenge, to bring fruit to this region. On the civil society, through the Islands program in particular, because of the way that it's built, we have recognized the importance of the civil society and inclusivity, especially gender and youth. And I think that their role in the region has been strengthened. I would say, as it relates to building their capacity, I know it's been done repeatedly, and I could possibly speak for all the regions that it has been tried and tested, where training opportunities have been given to CSOs. But I feel like the movement of CSOs globally has been improving, and that they're becoming more vigilant and more active in their proposal development. So I would suggest also an endorsement of their ability to do proposal writing. On your last point on the cruise ship sector, so the cruise industry is a very important industry for the Caribbean region. I always quote the figures from St. Kitts and Nevis repeatedly, maybe ad nauseum for my team. in the year 2019, before COVID hit, the cruise ship passengers to St. Kitts and Nevis was 2.4 million people. That's how many people live in St. Kitts and Nevis, Franklin? No? 50,000. So it is extremely valuable area for the region, and cruise ship passengers are transient. Just to set the context, the issue is that we question what happens to the waste on board. Some agreements are established where some of the waste may be put into the country, which is sort of not the right thing, but sometimes waste is removed. The Islands program actually had a component to address this, and it was focused in two areas where there's heavy tourism, Bahamas and the Dominican Republic, and we were able to successfully, we haven't finished the project, but we were able to successfully conduct the assessments at both ports, Punta Cana and Freeport. Is it Amaro? Yes? Yes? Abaco. And we will be buying a baler soon for Abaco in Bahamas, and we will speak to the representative from the Dominican Republic after the COP. He indicated we would like to roll out that project in the Dominican Republic as the assessment has been finished. And it really showed us the value of the cruise ship sector. It was extremely difficult to get the buy-in, but eventually we got it, and it showed that, in particular, Carnival Cruise Line really recognizes the value of the destinations that they visit, and eventually cooperated along with the port authorities in both these countries and the national stakeholders. So I think that was, let me stop there because I'm sure I'm going to get a small piece of paper telling me 2 minutes. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jill, for those very interesting insights into how we need to evolve and move forward and where we need to invest moving forward. Going to now move to Anil. You all know Anil. Everyone knows Anil. He's been in the Jeff now so long, I think he's actually part of the furniture. So he is ideally placed to give a very strategic perspective on where we go next with SIDS. We've had the Islands program. We have iCoast, which is coming very, very soon. A number of agencies have proposals at a country level. But we've also heard a lot of lessons and challenges over the last couple of days. So as we move to Jeff 9, how do you see Jeff supporting countries to overcome these problems? I don't think there's any surprises. And reach the critical mass of capacity to make SIDS pollution and hazardous chemicals free. What are we missing, and what should we be focused on? And how can Jeff support countries to better integrate their efforts across ministries to achieve this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which we call policy coherence? If you've ever heard the Jeff CEO speak, policy coherence is a key message from him. How do we get ministries and countries to work together? So, over to you, Anil.
Thanks, Kevin, and good afternoon again, colleagues and fellow islanders. Maybe I'll start by disagreeing with Tony in one of his last remarks, which was we should be looking at island time. And the reason is pollution is an urgent issue, right? So we sometimes have to get out of our island time and take action very quickly, particularly in the context of SIDS, where the vulnerability to pollution is much disproportionately higher than in larger geographies where, you know, you spill a ton of something, it mightn't have the impact if you spill a ton of chemicals on the Cook Islands, for example, right? There's quite a disproportionate impact. So, you know, in terms of how, you know, I've listened to the conversations yesterday and today, and there are challenges, and Tony actually eloquently raised a lot of those in terms of the capacity needs, the ability to do the work in the time that's allocated to do it. So when we, and with the Jeff CEO, our new Jeff CEO, well, he's not that new anymore, he's 4 years in. One of his big points to countries is that governments, and when we say governments, we usually refer to the executive branch, which is the ministries that do the policy work. But governments can't do the work that we require alone. So they'll never have the capacity to do it if we continue to say there isn't capacity, because you can't hire indefinitely into governments. There's a finite size, and so it's going to be difficult. So one of the things we look at the GEF is looking at how you would use a whole of society approach to enable countries to address not only pollution, but climate change, land degradation, and biodiversity loss. So when you look at it from that perspective, there is sufficient capacity if you sufficiently capacitate and empower different parts of your entire population to take action on the issues that we need. So when we look at governments, you should be also looking at the legislative branches as well, which are sometimes separate from the executive. And you need to build and retain institutional capacity. Joel spoke about training and training and training, which you're training people. And people move on, they change jobs, they retire. So you need to invest in the capacity of institutions to continue to train people as they come in, so that isn't lost. So if you train, I don't know, Kima or Halator or Patty, they will move on one day. So, but you need to make sure that when they're trained, they put those assets into the organizations that they exist within. So the next person who comes in can also benefit from the training, but also benefit from the lessons they have learned in implementing what they've been doing. So you keep building on it. You also need to look at how you capacitate and empower your private sector. I know we have some private sector people around, but the private sector, and you also have to recognize the private sector's main goal is profit. And when you realize that, you need to look at how you address their bottom line to meet your goals of pollution prevention or any other sustainability action. And so that requires having an enabling environment, which is legislation, policy, and access to finance that is suitable for private sector to engage, because they're not going to engage if there's too high a risk or too high a barrier. So governments need to ensure that that capacity exists for the private sector. But similarly, there are gaps, and there are always gaps in countries, particularly in SIDS, in sustainable business models and sustainable businesses. So the work the IDB is doing, for example, in the Caribbean with the incubator and the accelerator is trying to fill those gaps, trying to find and surface businesses that are actively wanting to engage in sustainable practices, to be pollution-free, to have zero waste practices, and you find a way to bring them to bankability, and then they can access the formal financial systems in countries to be able to enter into the space to fill that gap. And then Joel spoke about youth. You need to capacitate youth and CSOs not only to be shouting all over the place, which they sometimes tend to do, and I'm just being honest, I'm no longer youth, so I can say that. But they need to also have, they need to use their voice to lobby for change, based on evidence and based on a factual basis. And then finally, in the GEF itself, we also, in addition to all of these things we're looking at in terms of capacity, we've already invested a lot in building regional and national capacity. The colleagues who work on islands will tell you that I insist that if you're looking for consultants, you start looking inward first, into your countries and to your regions, to build that capacity within regions. And where it doesn't exist, you go outside, but make sure that when it comes in, it retains some of that capacity within your own geographies. In terms of what's missing or what we should focus on, pollution is always seen as the last child of environment, right? We talk about climate change, we talk about biodiversity loss a lot. And it needs to be embedded in all aspects of what we do in terms of our businesses, finance, education. So designing projects in the current phase of GEF and GEF 8, we've been deliberately working with countries and agencies to design in other aspects of pollution, to look at other environmental issues. So the iCoast program, which Kevin mentioned, is a tourism program that actually came out of islands, because we looked at one of the sectors as the largest for islands in terms of driving pollution. But along the way we designed iCoast is that pollution is what disrupts the assets that your tourism depends on, and we're looking at coastal tourism, so in islands, your coral reefs, your beaches. So you build that into it, and you start bringing that awareness and bringing pollution into the mainstream of what you do as countries and businesses. And then finally, how we can get to this great notion of policy coherence. I mean, those of you who have been around long enough in the chemicals and waste space, like apparently I am, it's what we used to talk about mainstreaming back in the day. We wanted to mainstream the sound management of chemicals into national development planning. That's something I worked on when I was in UNDP many, many years ago. But it's a little bit more than mainstreaming. It's trying to align domestic financial flows through looking at how you address perverse policies that are conflicting with each other in countries. A good example of that is agricultural policy in countries. The current agricultural practices and policies that support it and lending that supports it generally requires you to use pesticides to improve your crop yield, because there's a fear that if you don't use pesticides, your crops will fail, and therefore you'll have a loss in food security. But if you look at it from the perspective of the environment side, they're trying to get rid of chemicals from agriculture. So you have on one hand the agriculture ministry is doing the opposite of what the environment ministry is trying to achieve in terms of reducing damage to the environment from chemicals and damage to human health from chemicals. So we need to start working and looking across the different ministries where policies are conflicting with overall national policy. So that's when we say policy coherence, that's essentially what we're trying to aim at. And we do have in the current cycle of GEF 8, we do have a pilot on policy coherence, but more broadly in the chemicals and waste focal area programming that we've done over the last 3 years in GEF 8, we have intentionally, again, designed in, so the agriculture program, for example, the tourism program, the electronics program, you build in all those ministries into the project so that they can start looking at where they have conflicting policies. And in GEF 9, the proposals are actually to take this work even further, where you start, tagging budgets within ministries to see where you have areas that are negatively impacting the environmental and pollution goals that you will have through policy. So all in all, that's where we are in GEF. In GEF 9, we have much more an ambitious program where we will be looking more at how do you unlock finance from commercial and private sources to supplement what we have in terms of grant funding, to be able to accelerate the action that you guys have started in islands, but overall in chemicals and waste. But I'll take Tony's promise of not requiring any additional money. But the idea is to really start using the limited grant resources that we do have to be able to unlock much larger pots of money to be able to accelerate the action that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Right, I suppose we need now to hear from the people in the room and the people online. If there are any questions, please raise your hand, wave your flag, and if you do have a question, please introduce yourself and then pose your question. Do we have any questions in the room? There must be one. Was it all so clear? Go on, who's going to be first? Ah, we have a question in the room. All right. Oh, we have another question in the room also. Please go ahead. Please say who you are and where you're from.
Thank you so much. Try to speak Portuguese. Bom, chamo-me Lisa.
I'm Lisa Quaresma. I'm Director for Environment and Climate Action in São Tomé and Príncipe, and I am the Basel Convention focal point. I haven't exactly got a question, but I've got some remarks I'd like to make. I'd like to take up the words of one of our speakers who stated that chemicals are always last in the queue when it comes to priorities, but they are the ones which raise most problems when it comes to other biodiversity issues and water pollution. Now, I fully agree with that. In São Tomé and Príncipe, we have a similar situation to other countries when it comes to chemicals and dangerous pesticides. It's not a problem that's very visible. Many people, even in institutions, are unaware of the impact of chemicals on health and the environment. So over the exchanges over the past 2 days with different countries, I have noticed 4 very important things. And so I'm going to take them back to my country so that we can reflect upon them at national level. Now, the first is that without private sector involvement, the public sector will always be held back. We need to engage and involve the private sector. We need to create opportunities, and we need to create conducive environments so that the private sector can truly help us improve our management of dangerous or hazardous chemicals and waste. What has become a real challenge for São Tomé and Príncipe are the economies of scale. How can we involve the private sector? Because we don't produce enough waste to make this business attractive. So we need to work with other island nations in the Atlantic, or perhaps from other regions, in order to see how together we could conduct mass campaigns to collect all the dangerous chemicals and waste so that they can be removed from our countries, so that we can become island nations which are free of hazardous chemicals. Another challenge is the area of legislation. If we don't have the right laws, then it's difficult for us to manage hazardous chemicals and waste. We must hold importers accountable. We must extend the scope of the responsibility of importers so that domestically we can galvanise the necessary resources in order to tackle these challenges. Now, we rely on external funding, but we must work on galvanising domestic resources for this management. Thirdly, infrastructure for temporarily storing hazardous chemicals and waste. This is a colossal challenge. We need to find the appropriate space, have the right infrastructure with the necessary conditions so that we can correctly store these chemicals on a temporary basis until we identify another country or another infrastructure so that we can find a final solution for the eradication of these substances. So these are challenges. I've been working in this department for 15 years. I'm a chemical engineer by training, and I'm all too familiar with these problems. But I find that my hands are bound. I really don't know where to start because of the very numerous problems and challenges we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very powerful intervention. And I think there's a lot of countries in the room which will agree with your sentiments and share your concerns. And I hope that this program, now that we are starting in the Atlantic, will be able to help you at least address those immediate concerns that you have. There was another question, I think. Right at the back. Etienne, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Etienne Gonin from UNDP Technical Specialist. Just first, big congratulations for the event, the remarkable opportunity for exchange of experience. Congrats to the JEF, UNEP, CCKP, and all the, of course, to the countries and the partners present here. I had a question about the intervention in particular of Jewel. Regarding the tourism, you mentioned, of course, the cruise sector, but I was interested in more in general on the tourism sector and private sector, how you managed to engage with them for some activities in the program. This was also a sector in general that will be targeted through the ICOS program, which Anil has been mentioning as well in his intervention. So, you know, what are the elements that are quite important? Is it the expectation of new regulations? Is it the will to have, you know, a partnership or responsible social and environmental principles for these private sector companies? Or is it maybe to develop sustainable finance to do business better in this sector? So if you have some elements of response, would be very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for the intervention and the question, Etienne. So the engagement with this particular aspect of islands for the cruise ship sector was quite difficult. I won't mince my words. And it really required a lot of follow-up, both for the country level as well as in this case, we were working with Carnival Cruise Line. So it required a constant barrage of emails and follow-up on calls. And I'm sure without looking at her, Mara is shaking her head vigorously and nodding in agreement with me because she was the officer on this. And the driving force really was that there was a commitment from the private sector with a vested interest in their ESG goals. So they wanted to do this on the lens of corporate social responsibility. And it's not, when we started to dig deep, it wasn't as bad as it seemed. There were measures in place, especially at port facilities and measures on board as well to reduce or to increase sustainability at all levels. So it wasn't easy, but eventually we were able to be, well, we're almost there. I would say we're 3/4 way there to finish the actual activity. And we eventually have a good relationship now with these entities. Thanks.
Thanks, Jewel. Are there any other countries that have an intervention? No? I see Oksana from FAO has something she'd like to raise. Please.
Thank you. Food and Agriculture Organization, Oksana Perminova. Actually, I have a question to Jewel and to Tony as the two executing partners for islands. And the question would be following. I think, first of all, the small remark. I think it was a very good start when we had an agricultural sector integrated together. And BCRC has done a remarkable job in that. Actually, the question comes in following. We have looked at different type of policies indeed, but those type of policies are going to be movable only if we have a data information as well. The question comes whether these executing partners would be able, for example, to host such different type of policies, such different type of data, which would help to change or amend or have some revision of the policies. Would be nice to know. Thank you.
Ladies first.
Of course.
Sure. Thanks, Oksana, very much for the question. And Tony, being the gentleman, allowed me to go first in case you did not hear the comment. So in doing the preparation for the panel discussion, there was so much that I could have said. And Anil touched on it in his intervention about in building sustainability in anything, you have to ensure that the organization or the institution is strong. And from the BCRC Caribbean lens, what we did was subsequent from a Jeff-funded project, 5558, a legacy project. We developed a persistent organic pollutants regional information system, which was specifically for 8 countries. And that system was a brainchild of that project. And just to explain to the other colleagues that the system is based on the back end with ArcGIS, so that you can actually map data for persistent organic pollutants, point-specific data, which could inform decision making, as well as it can host the back end of it, can host just what you've asked for. So it can host, when you do, for instance, the national implementation plans for any country, you would have the raw data sets for each of the 5 categories. That information is now hosted in this for 8 countries. And it was very useful because when we had to update NIPS in our region, and we asked countries, well, where's the original data sets? It was not there, which is just your point. The view of the BCRC Caribbean as an institution, and as an organization, is that we want to build out this database for the Caribbean region. It's an extremely expensive endeavor for the center because the ArcGIS license, just so you know, is in excess of $12,000 per year. And it requires the maintenance and the support of the country. So the view of the center is that, yes, we built that original database for 8 countries, but now we want to extend it to all 15 countries. And it will host all of the, and I must say personally, that the food and agricultural aspect of islands for me is quite rewarding, and I wouldn't want to see that data be strewn in different locations. So that was the intention. So we do have a system in place. Thank you.
Yeah, Oksana, that's a very good question. And so for the Pacific region, we have the regional architecture that I spoke about. So in the Pacific region, we have various data portals. So there's a data portal that's kept by our sister agency, the Pacific Community. So they keep all the science data in their portal. Within SPREP, we have an environmental data portal that was formed about 10 years ago. And the data portal is in a project called Inform project that was through a ACP MEA project. So the data portal is available for all countries. It's actually owned by countries, so the countries have the parts of the portal where they can access, whether they allow others to access as well. So that sits there, and it's there because we saw that there's a lot of data that was not well kept and was kept either manually or in someone's computer. So this is kept centrally within the Secretariat, so at SPREP. Apart from that, we are constantly inputting data into the portal, including lots of policy, legislation, and other, I think, maybe ongoing research and ongoing data. So for example, one of the recent work that we're just about to complete is a prospectus in terms of waste management and pollution control for each of the countries. So that prospectus is layered on different layers. There's multiple layers: infrastructure, policy, waste data, to aggregating data to specific kinds of waste streams, 15 or so plus. The people, the capacity. So what that does is that once that's complete, it will allow very easy coordination of investment by different partners and agencies, where you can look up if you wanted to invest in Cook Islands or in Tonga or in FSM, you could make you could make an informed decision with the country very, very easily. So yes, we have a number of data portals that are available for our member countries to use. Thank you.
Thanks, Jewel and Tony. And I think one of the important takeaways perhaps from this is that the CCKM project, the coordination project of islands, perhaps needs a stock take of all of these existing systems. So perhaps a little bit of homework for our colleagues here in Geneva to actually sort of make people more aware of these, and so that we can look to see where we can learn off each other across the regions. So and where there are gaps, because perhaps we can also fill some of those gaps. So thanks, Tony and Jewel, for your inputs. I noticed one more question. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
My name is Leo. I'm from Tonga. Actually, this is not a question, it's just a general observation. We've heard a lot of discussion about the lack of resources and the limited capacity and so forth, but I didn't quite hear anything about increased public awareness and education. Having participated in the BRS, and the theme for the BRS is Make the Invisible Visible. And I remember the listed chemicals under the the Rotterdam Convention, some of the delegation don't even know what they use and the nature of those chemicals are being used in their country. And that is something that I don't think the general public knows. And that's why they keep on demanding the supply of those hazardous products to country for use, because they don't have that information. And linking that to make the invisible visible, I think it is our duty as government rep and so forth to ensure that the public are well informed of those information, making hazardous product visible to the general public. Therefore, they can make informed decision to ban or phase out those hazardous materials. And let's talk about plastic in general. When you look to plastic products, PET bottles and so forth, you see it's a harmless product, but you do not even know whether they're hazardous or not. And the only way you can know that is the chemical content of those plastic products. And that's why we need the INC process to be successful, because we need the scientific people to tell us that, so we can tell our people that that PET bottle might look harmless, but the chemical make out of that PET bottle is hazardous. That's why we need to ban or phase it out. So it's similar to what we are trying to do here. We're actually talking about building our capacity, increasing our limited resources. We need more money. But whether we are actually telling that to our people, that's something that we need to work on. And I have to admit, that's something that I did not really see discussed here in this workshop, and something that we need to include in our national project, because our people deserve to know which are hazardous and which are not. And if we don't know that at the national level, that's why we have the international multilateral agreements to tell us that, the international community to tell us that, so we are able to serve our people better. Thank you.
You've touched upon a very important point. country ownership of projects is very important, and you set your priorities for what happens at national level. So please, all of those countries that haven't signed agreements with your executing agency, please do so as soon as possible, because they are under a lot of pressure from us to deliver results. And doing work at national level requires an agreement with the country. So, you know, and then developing the work plan for the country is a negotiation where you set the priorities and work with your executing agency and with us to define those, and if we can develop materials to help meet your priorities, or whether you have to do something locally, is a decision on a case-by-case basis. But it really is important for the countries to take ownership, to identify their priorities, and if getting information out there to the general public is a key aspect of your work, then put it in your work plan. Prioritize it. So, yeah, I'd knock that one back to you, but I'm very glad that you made the point. Thank you very much. Okay, we've had some questions. We now have a few more discussions to go ahead. I'm going to pass now to Alfredo from IDB, who I know has stimulated an awful lot of interest over the last 2 days, especially today, on the project that IDB is doing in the Caribbean with BCRC. And so I'd like to pose a question. And it links to access to infrastructure and investment. It's come up a number of times that, you know, there's no access to private sector investment, and it's a barrier. And it's stopping us from dealing with our challenges in terms of pollution. So can you provide a short explanation as to how countries can engage with the development banks such as IDB, the timeline, the information that they need to provide, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the government? These are all very, very sort of straightforward, simple questions, but for those of us who are not familiar with development banks, and I put myself in that category, I would like an idiot's guide, if possible, to how we would communicate with you, and how can we take what you've done so successfully in the Caribbean and replicate it in potentially in other regions? So, Alfredo.
Thank you, Kevin. I will try to summarize everything in 1 minute. I don't know. www.iadb.org. You can find all the information over there, and that's more than enough. I can say it. That's one way. Now, let me summarize, and also for the benefit of the colleagues of other regions. Of course, the IDB is a regional bank. It means we only can work directly to the Caribbean and Latin American area. I try to articulate everything. First, the development banks are institutions to focus and support development. In that sense, using different tools, but mainly financing, try to improve the situation, local situation of the countries. Our motto in the IDB is improve life. So in some way or another, we try to improve the quality of life of the people, quality of life or quality of the planet, etc. And in some sense, our mission is to, at the end of the day, to disappear, because we reach a level that everybody is in a good position, in a good place. We haven't been able to do that, and I don't know, probably I will be out of the system after that. One additional thing that the World Bank always produce, I will say, not confusion, because we are a bank. There's a borrowing and loan of money. It's involved. There are some tools and instruments. But also we are, in order to guarantee or try to guarantee the development, we are actually an implementation agency. We have to be there. We are together with the project. We are together with the country. We are together with the government. Even we are together with the private sector asking for support. So we are there not only providing financing, also providing assistance. We try to solve the problems together. So that's usually is one key difference, that differentiate us from, I would say, commercial bank that is in the good sense and with all the rights focus in loan, pay me, and that's it. Tools we have in general, like we have several. I'm a technical person, I'm not an economist or financing person. There's really several tools, but usually you can group it in two, loans and grants. I mean, you need to return the money or you keep the money at the end of the day. Other difference we have is private or public. When you are talking about public, usually the big difference we have in any assessment we do with the private is we also need to add socio-economical analysis because we need to justify that the money, I mean, the government will ask for a loan. It means we'll have to pay in some moment or use the money of the people at the end. So because of the fiscal responsibility, we need to be sure that the money is well spent, that the project makes sense, not only for the usual technical, environmental, financing point of view, also from the social, economical point of view. It means makes sense to use the money in that. Other difference we have in the private and the public, when we are in the public sector, there's a competition. Every government has several issues. So, of course, here probably everybody thinks chemical and waste is the most important problem in the world, maybe. But for the government, it's one of the problems they have. The capacity to ask for a loan or capacity to do this kind of operations is limited. The country cannot ask for money. It's a limited amount of money for each country. We have the tools. It means we have a way to get the financing. Again, loans, grants. We have even some more sophisticated instruments, guarantees, policy-based loans, etc. There are several. It's not the time to go there. Again, the webpage is very good in that scenario, but always IDB or institutions can help you in that sense. It means money is there. In some way or another, you can find the way to get the money. So, straight to the point, first, timeline. It varies, it depends of the complexity of the project. Usually, the thing we are sure is the time when we have the project ready. It means design, all the documents are ready, and we go to the internal approval process. That's probably is the only time that we can control in some way or another internally. For the private sector, in theory, my colleagues of IDB Labs tell me 3 to 6 months. In my experience, has been 6 to 18 months. Usually, but it's a year. In the public sector, there are several more complications, so usually it's 1 year. The whole cycle, coming back to the idea of we are together for the actual implementation, so from day one to the day of the opening. Again, it depends. Actual experience in the IDB lab, the Blue Tech Challenge, has been 1 year, 1.5 years. From the day 0, they said, I have a proposal, to the day of, okay, we are starting to actually do the thing we want to do. In the public sector, everything all the examples you can find, it's from 1 year. I have been involved in solid waste projects that have been taken from day 1 to the big opening, 10 years. Because several things, it's not only, that's a beauty or that's a problem of implementation. When you talk about implementation, you talk of several issues. It's not a technical thing, it's all, or not only a technical thing, could be an environmental thing, could be a property of land issue, a community issue, political issue, etc. We have all the issues of the world in these kind of things. How to do it? I mean, usually the cycle starts with the idea, then the assessment of the situation, what's the problem we want to solve, and then we actually design the solution. Usually, again, with assessment, comparing many alternatives. In the private sector, usually you start in this point. In theory, you receive a proposal. Okay, I'm private, I am this company, I want to do this. In the public sector, usually you start from a little bit before the idea. Solid waste sector, usually it's not the best. We don't receive usually projects ready to be implemented. Usually we need to start from really basics. So that's a additional complication. We had that complication in the public sector, and now in the implementation of GEF Island, also we have found this kind of problems also in the private sector. The lack of, I will say, readiness of the project. Sometimes there are many questions to be solved. What questions we have to be sure? I mean, always we need to understand the context of the place. Somebody said about the public awareness. This is one basic information, but also is a legal obligation to do the thing you want to do. I mean, is somebody in your country asking you to do this, or is just a pure business? If you are talking about private, it's a pure business thing. Do you have an idea? There is a target for recycling, or it's just a policy that somebody said, I want to do this. You know, it's a big difference to be in an environment where it's something should be accomplished by law. That's something that is good to be done in the sense of policy. When you go internally to the documents or to the projects, usually one thing we face a lot of problems, and we always ask, is a combination of flow and logistics. The materials come from where, goes to where. Very basic question that surprisingly, usually private and public doesn't have too clear. I mean, I want to recycle this. Okay, you're getting the waste from where? Are you ready? I mean, your system, it's robust. You're completely sure you will receive this waste from now to the future? Not always. Not at this level, but at the level of huge projects. We have a couple of projects in Mexico for tires recycling, 4 million tires per year. Everything was perfect. All the technical parts was perfect. One tiny aspect was forgotten by how you will get the tires in the facility. They said, I have a conversation with the government, and we asked the government, will you provide or will you pay to get all the tires of the city? In that case, for Mexico City, 20% of the tires of the city come into the facility? I said, no, I never said that. I said, I support the project. It's different to say, I will pay for the actual system to get and transport the tires to the facility. So always you need to ask these kind of things. So many projects start with the bright idea, and then we go to this process. Some of them are not able to reach the final approval. The second question was how to do it. It's actually every system has different ways. The Blue Tech Challenge is very easy, simple. It's a form, they provide the idea, cost, money, budget, etc. When it's a loan, it's more sophisticated. It's several missions, conversations with the government, all the stakeholders, etc. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a straightforward process. Many, many questions being asked. It's this thing, what was it, replicated, could be replicated. That's a word. I will say completely, yes, it's possible. What do you need? Okay, what do you need? You need to have a kind of institution, not necessarily as the IDB, but institution with some finance muscle or finance capacity, because always it's good to bring fresh resources, extra resources, and also needs to have the interest to help you in the implementation, accompany to be with you during the whole process. You need to be able to do these assessments. You need to be able to balance the level, the element of the soft and the hard. Usually we have problems that people is asking just pure money for equipment. I just want to please, I need to purchase 3 trucks, but trucks is nothing. You need to do something else. You need something soft. And the other sometimes always happen. I just need money for salaries. So we need to balance these kind of things. I will say, if we have an institution as IDB with this capacity to be there, not only financially, also during the preparation and the implementation, you can do the same in other regions. Gonna be easy? No. The IDB could help with the lesson learned. Some of them are good, some of them are really messy. I think that's it.
Thank you, Alfredo, for that different perspective on how we can actually reach into the world of banking to support the countries to actually develop the necessary infrastructure that they've been asking for. We're now going to turn to a different group of stakeholders. We're going to ask Marnik from Close the Gap now to perhaps turn to a practical example on what countries need to do to foster an enabling environment for the successful delivery of circular economy. A lot of these new instruments, the GFC, for example, talk a lot about circular economy, and I know it's going to feature probably hugely in the forthcoming new GEF replenishment in terms of value chains and going back up to production, to clean production. So how can we develop these solutions at national and regional level? And how can we have a critical mass of waste to make something like an EPR system work? So, Marnik, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I think most of the day we spent on discussing many of the topics I'm going to raise now, I tried to structure those in a list. You shouldn't treat those sequentially. I had a discussion earlier on in one of the breakout rooms. I don't think it's a matter of getting this right first and then on to the next step, etc. I think this is something that should be addressed at the same time in order to make sure that you're taking the right steps to set up a waste management ecosystem in your country. I must say my experience mostly lies with waste and e-waste in particular in Africa, which is already challenging, I would say, as such, and I've learned through the discussions I had with other people present here that SIDS are even more challenging in terms of the circumstances you have to deal with and the challenges you face. But I do think that there are effectively some key takeaways from the conference that you can build on for that matter. The first is something we discussed lengthily here, the establishment of clear regulatory frameworks. I think the national waste policies derived from international guidelines can definitely help in defining responsibilities for all of the stakeholders in the value chain, that's from importers to producers, consumers, but also recyclers at the end of the day. It also helps in setting a clear playing field for private sector partners. It was mentioned earlier that we really need those to build the policies around as well. I think if you have a clear policy, then private sector investors also know what the playing field is. Like if I can draw the parallel with the import tariffs that the US was playing around with recently, it's not necessarily the import tariffs, it's rather the uncertainty that is actually blocking investments and causing chaos. Of course, extended producer responsibility is one of the, or PRO systems, producer responsibility organizations, are one of the solutions in policy and regulation, but there are others to investigate as well. Secondly, the investment in scalable infrastructure. It was mentioned during the first Q&A here in the panel discussion. The need to have decent infrastructure, proper infrastructure in place. Not only, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be very high-tech gear, but you really need a solid environment to make sure that you can store the waste properly and safely. And I think that also pertains to making tools as well as dismantling hubs available, maybe even freely, to whoever, informal or formal recyclers, whoever is working on waste, so that they have at least an enabling environment to do things safely and environmentally sound. Another option could be in this field to support recyclers as a government, as a national authority, in the obtaining required infrastructure or difficult to get materials. One example is vermiculite, for battery storage. That's not something easy to get in all parts of the world. So that's something, and definitely not by individual recyclers. So that's something that governments can maybe assist in and help them get these kind of things and tools to manage their business and add such fractions, I would say, to their service offering as well. Over to the empowerment of the informal sector and local entrepreneurs. I think the discussion earlier we had on that, if there is an informal sector, waste pickers, collectors in place on your island, in your region, I would definitely not dismiss them. I would definitely build upon them. They have a lot of experience. They can really be supported through training, through certification, etc., in order to learn, if necessary, to do things in the right way, rather than dismissing them completely and going for formal recycling opportunities only. I think those can really go hand in hand, where you build upon the capacity and the know-how and the strength of the numbers of informal collectors and recyclers to some extent. Then strengthening public awareness and civic participation. I think the lady over there touched upon it in the first Q&A, first part of the Q&A. Indeed, I think it's very important to build up awareness creation campaigns in schools with civil society organizations that can really help foster a culture of reuse, repair, recycle, so that really becomes part of your national culture almost. And I would say that's also probably a good idea to work on transparency and really showing what happens to the waste that you are actually collecting in your country, and that your individual countrymen and women are actually producing, so that they have a clear idea on, let's say, what that process is and why it's important for them to also, sort waste, to drop off, for example, electronics at collection points, etc. Because this shows that you have nothing to hide, that this is something that is benefiting your region or your country, and in the end, transparency will always help you there. Then over to technical and institutional capacity. Very important side note made here, I think, is indeed at the fact that we're working on training people and individuals, but eventually you want to have organizations with a long-lasting footprint to maintain that knowledge, to maintain those good practices. So it's very important to set up a culture and a system of, for example, trainers, having customs officials, if you're talking about waste shipments, but also other authority representatives, so to say, to be trained and properly informed about new additions to your policies, for example, so that this knowledge can be distributed to other parts of your government or your civil society. And then I would say cooperation initiatives like these also help very much. I mean, I think we all see that happening, and people are talking amongst themselves and asking, hey, but how exactly did you do that in that project, or how did you manage to set up that relationship that is clearly helping you? I think those initiatives should also be very much continued and fostered. Maybe side note on investment, I briefly touched upon it when I was talking about policy and regulation. I think private sector entrepreneurs can come up with really great innovative solutions for waste fractions that you might consider waste, but that they might consider as valuable raw products, for their business model. So that's another takeaway, I would say, to make sure that you're fostering your local ecosystem of entrepreneurs that maybe see wealth in waste rather than a challenge or a problem to be disposed of. and then that goes hand in hand with R&D investments in your local incubators and your universities or higher education institutions. Maybe, Kevin, you also asked on the critical mass, how we can make sure that we get to a critical mass where, for example, EPR systems are feasible. For SIDS, that is very challenging. I understand and I respect that. I think someone already touched upon it earlier, working together with other island states, pooling waste, but also resources. For example, if you talk about logistics, that could be pooling waste, making sure that we have the beautiful example of Swire. It's a project where a shipping company is basically through a CSR program supporting, I believe it was in Barbados, not 100% sure, but they help them and actually empty shipping containers. They're dropping off consumer goods, etc., to the island or taking back waste in order to get that waste processed abroad. That's a great example there. I think if several islands kind of collaborate and pool their waste, that could be something that could be developed in other island states as well. The infrastructural pooling of resources that I referred to earlier, there I'm thinking about, let's say, a complementary investment policy where not everyone is investing in the same waste treatment facilities, for example, but that you focus on complementarities and make sure that one region is investing in this and the other is investing in that, so that together creates a proper value chain. The storage facilities, again, minimize environmental risks while waste is being stored. And then last thing I've written down is, no, I think I covered everything. Sorry. Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Manik. We'll now go, as I know the interpreters are going to close in 9 minutes exactly. I'm now going to turn last but not least to Kyriakos from Polyeco. I heard a lot of very interesting dialogue and conversations going on. I would encourage you all to make bilateral direct communications with the partners here, but also please copy your executing agency so that they know what the flow of information is happening going back and forth. So Kyriakos, we've heard a lot about enabling environments, but what do you need to make a sound, successful business case to invest in one of the SIDS? And can you see a situation where you would replicate your success in other regions, in other countries?
Hello again. I'm Kyriakos Chomatas, chemist, waste management expert and facility manager of interim storage facility for hazardous waste in Mauritius. We have prepared a short drone video just for you to have an idea how our facility is and what are the basic features of the facility. First of all, we must say that the facility belongs to the Ministry of Environment of Mauritius and has been constructed in 2017. It's a state-of-the-art facility with all modern features which is needed for a facility of its kind. For example, this is the building, the first, please stop here the video. So the facility that you can see, the main building, let's say, is the offices, of course, but is also the laboratory, which is essential. It's the heart of the facility because before we collect any kind of waste, we must have a general analysis to have the physical and chemical properties of the materials, because all those information are strictly related, first of all, with the acceptance criteria that we have in the facility, because we cannot accept all kinds of waste, has to do with the classification, has to do with the most important, with the personal protective equipment that we must use while we do the waste management, and of course, the packaging materials that we use for the transportation, the labeling according to the international and the IMDG code, and finally, with the acceptance criteria of the disposal facilities. So this is the main, the key element of the facility. Now, as you can see, there are 4 storehouses. The first on the left is the quarantine, where all repackaging works are taking place. And then you can see 3 big compartments of 1,500 square meters each one. Each compartment that you can see is special designed to accommodate specific stream of waste. So each compartment has its own individual firefighting system based and according the specification of the waste that are stored inside in each compartment. So one compartment has a water system, a sprinkler, the other has a fog, and the other has a foam. The small building that you can see after the platform, the cement platform on the right, is the pumping station, which has a tank, a water tank of 250 cubic meters. So the facility is at all times independent in terms of firefighting services. On the left, you can see also 3 ponds that they are collecting the rainwater, the drain water, and the contaminated water in case of contamination from the, or a leak from the compartments. As you can see, it's a big area. There are a constant grass cutting in a very clean and careful condition to ensure that we will not have any incident of wildfires from the forest or anything else. So the facility can support itself in all means. Now, the important thing, let's say, as a role model for your countries is how that system works. By system, I mean the collection. The Ministry of Environment of Mauritius has a platform, an electronic platform, when each producer can do an application for its waste to be disposed. Then the Ministry of Environment, we have access to in this platform, so we are checking the application and we do inspection to confirm that the application that the client did meet our criteria. We check the quantity, the type of waste, and any other detail needed before the collection. If everything is okay, we are giving the green light to the ministry to inform the client that his application has been approved, and then the collection is followed. After the collection, we bring all the waste in our facility, do the repackaging, do the labeling, and we have always standard transboundary movement licenses for the basic waste that we are facing day to day, let's say, like pharmaceutical, paint, solvents, laboratory, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So after this is the exportation, and finally the final disposal. This is how generally works. So we're just operating the facility on behalf of the ministry. We don't do, let's say, business with the client or with the producers. And now, the main, as you can see, is an amazing facility, very big for the level of the island, but it proved its value before 5 years when Wakasio oil spill happened. A cargo ship went aground to the reef, so 1,000 tons of crude oil was pollute the island, and we collect almost 3,000 tons of waste. There, inside the facility, all the packaging took place, all the storage until the license is being made and be approved. So it was like 2 years. So only for this we can say that he proved the money, and it was a great luck to have that thing. But in the day-to-day, let's say, operation, the biggest challenge and the problem is to ensure the stream of waste that we are, the input of the hazardous waste. In simple words, how to oblige the producer to dispose their waste. And there is only one answer to this question. There's no other way. It's enforcement, nothing else. What you need for enforcement? You need resources, human resources, and knowledge. Human resources, when we are talking about only environmental people, let's say, from ministry, they are never enough. So we must activate more people. Who is those more people? Is all those that can interact with those waste in their normal operation. So we are talking about port authorities, we're talking about police, we're talking about army, we are talking about a fire brigade. All those people, sooner or later, we will face hazardous waste in a normal, let's say, situation or in an emergency situation. So by this, we're increasing the volume of the people that they can check. They can say, don't touch this, this is a waste, this is a hazardous waste. But for this, what is needed is knowledge. Reason, I already suggest to some people here, and I suggest to all of you to do some training regarding the identification, characterization, labeling, operation procedures, health and safety issues, transportation according to ADR or MDG. All those can be summarized in Has-Hooper training. I'm just suggesting, okay, which is by the American Health and Safety Organization, which is relates with hazardous waste operation and emergency response. We provide such seminars. We did it in Maldives last year, 60 people. We did it in Mauritius, another 70 people, just to give the tools to recognize, to identify, and to push finally everyone to follow just the environmental law. Because the law is existing, but the thing is, who will do the enforcement? Governmental officers are very few, and they have so many work in other things that it's very rare to be on the streets, let's say, or in the factories. That was my general presentation. If you want to add something or to ask something, feel free.
Thank you very much, Kyriakos. Time is against us, I'm afraid. Thank you for the interpreters for your hard work during today. Just some, a round of applause. Thank you to GGKP for all of their hard work putting this together. And to you, of course, for your active participation. Thanks to the panelists for their insights. I would like to make a suggestion that we need more of these sort of interactive webinar type discussions with technical experts, such as Kyriakos, coming in with practical examples on the ground which can be shared. So please don't all rush off and bombard him with messages. I think we'll have a chat and figure out how we can look at some best practices from across the region in waste management and practical things that are done on the ground, and perhaps put together another one of these, not gatherings, but virtual gatherings in the months ahead. So that's going to be my recommendation. I would like you all, please, if there are any recommendations on how we can improve these sorts of meetings, how we can do things better, how the subject matter that you would like to hear and know more about from these, please take this as the launch pad and the springboard to move forward. And from our side at UNEP, I will be leaving in January, so this is probably the only one of these meetings that I'll be joining. But I'm very, very glad that this has happened before I've left. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Eloise and the team at UNEP, the team at UNDP, the team at FAO, the team at IDB, and of course, Anil from Jeff, who I'd like to now please invite just to say a few final words.
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon again, colleagues. First, I know this was a bit of a stretch for the colleagues who were here in Geneva negotiating quite difficult discussions last week, so I really appreciate that you took the time to stay for an additional couple of days and share experiences. I think more importantly, for us to hear the challenges that you are facing with the implementation so that when we go back home, we can think about how we can help support your work going forward. But also to be able to look to the future. Kevin alluded to it, but we're in the middle of, well, not in the middle, we're in the start of the JEF9 replenishment period, where we are doing a stock take of all the work we've done over the last 3 years, and trying to use insights from that experience of developing projects that are quite different from the time when I joined the JEF in 2010, to now, where we do look more actively at blended finance, looking at more strategic engagement with the private sector, and looking at this whole of government, whole of society approach and policy coherence. So the JEF9 strategy is based on a lot of the lessons that we've heard, and we'll continue to refine that over the next year of negotiations. The first negotiation is actually next Tuesday and Wednesday, so that's my next task, to listen to see how the donors have taken to the proposals that we put forward. But we do plan to look at a second phase of this program. The ICOS program is already kind of a second phase. It takes on a specific sector. But the hope is that in the next phase of Ireland's learning from this one will give you more time to implement. So not 5 years, maybe 6 or 7 years to do that. But also look at different formulations that might work better. So maybe not solely regional projects, but probably a mix of some activities that require regional work, something like if we wanted to replicate the incubator that the IDB is doing, for example, that would require a more of a regional approach across all regions. The work that FAO is doing in the Caribbean as well to replicate that across the regions and to take the lessons that they've been working on and the experiences and building better programs and interventions in the other regions. But looking at where countries do need to have dedicated projects of their own within the context of a program to be able to continue to learn from others, but also benefit from knowledge that would be extracted, synthesized, and disseminated. So I'm sure I'll see many of you in a couple months' time back here in Geneva in this part of this campus to negotiate the plastics treaty, and then later in November again. So there's lots of opportunity for you guys to engage with us. I will say my virtual door is open. If you have issues, and I'll say this in front of them, if you have issues with your implementing agencies or your executing agencies, please reach out directly to me so that I can help you work through those and figure out the best way to get the agencies to step up if they're not stepping up or change the way they're working in some areas. Our job at the JEF is to support countries to make sure that you have the resources to meet your convention obligations and that you can have interesting programs in the future. So thank you for this 2 days. It will not be the last one. We will have several others as we implement the program, but also as we move into new programs. And I hope to see some of you back here in August. For the colleagues who joined us from the implementing agencies and the executing agencies, thank you again for your time and the work that you've put in the last several years to support countries in their work. And we look forward to you continuing that in the next 3 years as we get to the end of the program. and safe journeys back home, and see you again soon. Thank you.
And now I get to use my hammer for the last time. So yeah, safe trip home, everybody. Meeting closed.